Welcome back to another episode of the How to Home podcast. My name's Aaron Massey alongside Tracy Pendergast. And our guest today is Zac Ruiz from Den for Our Cubs. And we're talking about some unconventional living. Zac has a really cool Instagram. It's a little unconventional. And we're going to talk to him all about his living situation and everything that he's got going on. Thank you for being here, first of all.
Man. Thanks for having me.
We're so excited to have you.
Why don't you give us a little bit of a background on yourself and what it is that you kind of do?
Sure. So, name's Zac. I have a wife, Katie, and then our two boys, Fox and Grizzly. And we're originally from California. That kind of just brings up right there a whole story of how we've ended up into a different state in our living situation. But, we essentially just left the state for a better life. And now we live in a tent that's 300 square feet in New Mexico.
Wow. We're going to have to hear about what led to that decision. That's a huge lifestyle change.
We've got a lot of questions lined up. I think our audience is going to take a lot of information away from this episode as far as, how you went from living in a traditional California setting to what is kind of a yurt, right?
It's essentially. Yeah, we looked at yurt options, like the whole round setting just didn't really we weren't into it. And so we eventually found that you could just basically do the same thing, but with a square setting. And we're like, oh, that works because it's more like a cabin field in a circular yurt. So
you can actually scoot some furniture into some
corners.
Exactly,
yeah, you got corners
nips.
Versus weird circular walls and cabinets and stuff. So
right.
Before we get into that, we just want to take a quick second and say thank you to our founding sponsor of the show, Filter By, for making this series and this episode possible. Filter By is an HVAC filter provider. They can manufacture and ship over 600 different sizes of filters for your HVAC units, and everything ships for free the next day.
Yep, it's so easy. We have them in our house, and we just set our preferences, and you never have to think about getting filters again. So it's really easy and a great company.
And so we can't thank them enough for being part of the show. And we also want to encourage you guys to interact with us on social media at howtohome_guide on Instagram, or you can find us on Facebook as well. So make sure you guys are getting involved in the show. And let's just dive in.
Yeah, let's do it. I think kind of the first question is, why? What led you to this life that you're living now?
Yeah.
It's probably a loaded question.
Yeah, no, it really is. You got 40 minutes?
Yeah, we got tons of time. Just go ahead.
So I guess it really started would be having a kid. That was the first step to it in our adventure. That was 5 years ago, almost. And that just changes your mindset. I'm sure you guys both have kids. So you know that having a kid just completely changes your outlook on life. And from there it was, how do we give our kid a good life now? And we were in California living in an apartment, paying $1,600 to rent a pretty crappy apartment. You start looking at your kid's quality of life and what's my kid gonna do? And he starts getting older. He's about a year now, and you just start seeing it's pretty easy just to stay inside all day and let him play an iPad. And then we got a little 8x4 concrete area outside, and that's kind of his play area. And I don't know, you start getting to a point where this is really what I want for my kid. And then you start looking at your own life as well and what do you like to do? I'm I like to mountain bike. I'd really like to hunt. I'd rather just be outdoors hiking and doing fun stuff like that. I live in California. How am I going to do that? It's probably not going to happen very easily. And even just being back out here again, I went mountain biking and it took me an hour to get out there and then an hour to get back. And in my house right now, in an hour I can be in the Colorado mountains riding my bike. And here it's cool, you can get to some maybe some pretty cool stuff, but nothing that's going to touch the Colorado riding and stuff. So yeah, you started looking at just what are we going to do in our life and where are we going to be in 10 years? And we didn't really like where we saw. So our plan just didn't look good for 10 years. But we're probably going to be working the same jobs we're working now. Do we really like those jobs? No.
Where were you guys working?
I started off in personal training, and then I got involved in CrossFit stuff, and then got certified and as a CrossFit coach. And I did that for about 7 years. And then my wife was a hairstylist, and she did that for 9 years.
So both commission-based
Yeah, exactly.
jobs.
And we both had good client base. So it was hard. That was one of the hard parts was leaving. You have a 8-9 year client base built up. And then all of a sudden you're hey, just drop this and move to a different state and try to figure it out. So that was the biggest reason we stayed for a long time was what are we going to do? We started an Etsy shop in California as a side gig. And that actually started picking up some momentum. So we're if we move, we can really focus on that and have a possibility of being self-employed at that point. So that was one of the biggest reasons we moved too was, hey, we'll have a lot more space to run a shop. Running a shop out of an apartment's not ideal. So how are we going to get this thing set up and moving? Well, getting a house in a different state would probably be a good first start to that. So
was the original conversation a house somewhere else, or was it like, how did this evolve?
Yeah, there's a lot to it, and I might jump back and forth if I think of other things. But really, was just let's get out of the state. That was our first step. So then was where's our options? And New Mexico was number one because my wife's from there and she had family there, so it was a familiar place. We visited 7 years at that point, and just regularly, twice a year about. And so we knew the area, we liked it. I was anti-living there for a long time just because I was so used to my comfort zone in California and my little bubble, and it was my life for 28 years. So I was like, I don't want to leave that. But like I said, then you get to a point where you're asking yourself, do you really enjoy life? And you're like, my answer was, no, I don't really enjoy life here. And I don't do the things I want to do. So let's move somewhere where we can do that. So yeah, it was move out of state. New Mexico was our first step. We thought we'd just move there and then eventually move somewhere else. But we ended up, I've personally fallen in love with that whole area out there. So now we're still there. But yeah, it was to get a house. And then we ended up being able to find a house, and we were renting a house for $1,000 a month. And that was a 5-bedroom house versus
a tiny
a 2-bedroom apartment for $1,600. So that right away, that was just a huge cost cut and just a better living situation.
Mm-hmm. And then you guys transitioned to a camper, right? Or an
Yeah,
RV.
and from there, we lived there for a year, and that gave us a lot of time for me to just get the shop rolling. And then I really started picking up some more momentum, making lights and, working on new designs and stuff. So that was a year I really just kind of worked on the shop. And then from there, the whole time we've been looking at different living situations and what's next. Like, we're not going to continue to rent. We're just throwing away money every month, renting houses and stuff. So how can we do something for ourselves that's going to benefit us later in life without paying $500 to buy a house? And that was another reason California was like, hey, we want to own a house eventually, but how are we going to ever do that? Like, we're not going to qualify for a $600,000 loan, but ever. So how are we going to get a house? It's impossible.
You could just live a life of stress like Aaron and I.
There you go, yeah. And even if
never knowing when the shoe's going to drop.
Exactly. And
going gray in your early 30s.
Exactly. And then it was, even if we could get a $600,000, $700,000 loan, dude, we want to actually do that and then be paying it off for the rest of our lives. And for us, it was, no, we don't want to do that. So what's our options? Like I said, it was move out of state and then figure out some other stuff from there. So people always think, I think that you have to have like everything figured out and this whole master plan. We didn't know what the heck we were doing. We just literally were like, let's just get out of state, and then we'll go from there. And that was our first step. So get out of state. We had a year to figure stuff out. From there, we had gotten some land. And so we made a plan that we're going to get a camper, because that was the quickest way to get onto the land. You just drive the thing onto the land, and you can live in it, essentially. You get a generator, and you can have power. So it was get the camper onto the land. We lived in that for 4 months. And then I came across basically the yurt idea. And it seemed like it was a cool idea, but we were really wondering, like, could you live in this? And mainly with, like, what we kind of talked about was 2 kids. Like, how do you live in something like that with 2 kids? Is it doable? But we figured that out with the camper, because that's going to be a much smaller living space. So after 4 months of in the camper, we realized, hey, we can live in this small of a space with 2 kids. Like, anything that's bigger than this is just going to be an upgrade. So, and that's where the whole tent idea came out. I basically just bought a tent. I found one locally that was used. It was an old hunting tent that they said they used for like elk hunting trips. So it was kind of like worn. I call it the Indiana Jones tent. Kind of just had like that weird like canvas look, real rough, and a lot of patches and stuff. And built a frame for that, and then started moving forward with the tent idea.
Yeah, so it's not, I mean, for those of you who haven't aren't following you yet or any of that type of stuff, it's not like a camping tent.
Yeah,
it's like a big canvas
That's
tent.
it. Yeah, exactly. People always like, you live in a tent, and they think like an 8-man like Coleman tent. We're like all crunched down in the tent, but no.
On an air mattress.
Yeah, it's 300 square feet. We built the ceiling to be 12 feet tall, so it's not small. Like, when you're inside of it, it feels, it's a house. It's really
and beautifully decorated. I'm just like in awe of how beautiful it is and how homey it feels.
Well, thank you.
Let's talk about the process of how, the evolution of it becoming a home. I mean, you took a tent and you built it into a house.
Yeah.
I mean, it has walls, it has a bathroom, it has a little kitchenette.
Yeah.
It has all of that. So talk to me about how kind of that evolution.
Sure. I don't know. People complicate the whole process, like, well, how are you going to get a toilet? How are you going to do this? How are you going to do that? Again, like they think they have this like whole master plan built out. Like all of the areas of difficulty I've found that aren't difficult. There's always really easy solutions. There's tons of companies out there that you can get an easy solar setup. You can get an easy composting toilet. All those problems are not really problems if you just do your research. So research is the biggest thing. Getting, I guess, a game plan from there. You can figure out all those things from there if you just look into it a little bit more. But yeah, basically was build a platform for the tent. We measured out the tent, me and my buddy. He's my Aussie bro. But yeah, it was build our platform, build our frame to match our tent, and then literally just slid the tent over the frame. The biggest thing was keeping the weather out, because in New Mexico, like this winter, we had a really harsh winter. We got, at one point, I think we had 18 inches of snow load on the roof of the tent. So we had a rain fly though, which is a big plastic, essentially tarp, and that just helps to shed snow and rain. And
nothing came in.
We've had zero issues with anything coming in. Only issue I ever thought would be a problem would be like wind, because we have pretty high winds that come through. But we do have a lot of trees around us, and so that really breaks up the wind. If we were out in the middle of like a field, just plopped in the middle of the field, our tent would not be existing anymore. But the trees have definitely been our saving grace with like high winds. But yeah, that rain fly just sheds all the rain, all the snow, and really just keeps us dry. We've never had a leak.
So eventually, will you have to replace the exterior? Can you just drop a new tent
Yeah,
on?
and that's always been the idea. If we did ever live in it long enough that we needed a new tent, if it like started getting, mold can be a problem in those things, but we're in a very dry area. But it can be a problem, or if we got a big hole punched in it and we couldn't patch it, we could just take the other tent off and then slide a new tent on. We'd have basically a new home. So
That's so cool.
It's really cool. I mean, I have a lot of questions as like somebody from a building background. Obviously, a canvas tent, as far as heating and cooling and stuff, can be like a little questionable. How do you guys deal with that?
that was our biggest concern, and like family obviously voiced that concern, like your kids are going to be freezing, but that actually has been not the biggest issue we've had by any means. It does get cold where we're at. I think it hit negative 11 in that area, and then people were saying that it was hitting out like negative 15, negative 25 out in the windy areas out. So it gets cold. Right. It's not warm.
Yeah, it's definitely not warm. Not compared to California weather.
Yeah, exactly.
Sure. And you did something interesting with, instead of windows, you guys used, what kind of sheeting did you use on the front of your house?
It was like a polycarbonate. That was one of the parts that I didn't know if it would work out. I just kind of went for it, but I looked into getting like really big polycarbonate sheets, like the actual really thick stuff, and like spending a lot of money doing it. But the whole idea with the tent was to keep costs really low. That was our whole idea, is how do we save money? How do we not spend a lot of money building a house? So I basically just bought like the roofing, like a patio roofing from Home or Lowe's, and then I made a front out of that for our tent. So we don't have any windows, but all the light comes from the front of the tent. So we can keep our basically our drawstrings pulled open, and all the light just floods in from the tent. And if we ever wanted to, we could let the drawstrings down to block out light, but we don't do that too often.
There's like so many questions.
Yeah. What do you guys use for your heat when it does get cold?
Okay, so yeah. Well, the one cool thing about the canvas is it does a good job of reflecting heat back in. So it doesn't necessarily maintain a lot of heat over time. So over time it dissipates quickly, but it does reflect, and so does the polycarbonate. It does a good job of reflecting like immediate heat back in. So if you get a wood-burning stove, people have no problems with those. Wood-burning stove wasn't the greatest option for us because...
The kids?
Yeah, the kids. At the time, we had a kid that was crawling around, and I just didn't really want a 10 by 10 square cut out in a 300 square foot home for a stove. So I started looking into a lot of other options, and a little propane heater was the next one we tried. And the one we got was like a clean burning indoor one. So I think it was called a Big Buddy. So we just hooked that up to a 60-gallon propane tank and run that for the wintertime, and that's been, there's still set corners of the room. Like if you go into the closet when it's midwinter, like it's cold. Mm-hmm. But if you're next to the heat or have like anywhere around that heat, like we made it through 2 winters now with that thing just heating us, and we're fine. We're not running around in like our underwear But you get some good socks, some sweatpants, some sweatshirts, and we were fine. And my wife's not as, I guess, tough as me as like in the cold stuff, but it wasn't like anyone was in danger. Like we weren't going to wake up frozen by any means. Yeah.
Right. That's a good thing.
Yeah.
And then what about water? Where do you get your water?
So water, we're right by the river. Her mom has a well that she has dug, so we pull all of our water from that. It was basically our Berkey. That's where we get all our drinking water, and we filter everything for drinking water from that. And then we also have a little, over our sink, we just have a little like 5-gallon water holder that we use for our running water, and we just keep filling that thing up. So we always have running water in a sense, just not in a conventional sense of plumbing and water coming from a city pipe. But I just pull water in from there. I'll haul 5 gallons in with those buckets from the well, and then we'll put that in our Berkey, and then we use that for everything that we need.
With all of these things that are very different from like conventional living, what's kind of the most challenging? What do you wake up some days and I don't want to have to deal with going and doing this? Or does it make it harder, or are you just used to it?
Yeah, I wouldn't say harder. It's just different. Like you're gonna have challenges in any living situation. Like you own a house, something punches a hole in your roof, like you're still expected to fix that hole in your roof.
Right.
It's still on you. Like there's always gonna be the home challenges. So there's that stuff. For us, it's cool because our house costs $5,000 to build. So say a tree, well, hopefully not while we're in it, but say a tree does fall on our house, like we're out $5,000. Like we build a new one or we figure something else out. Like it's not like our whole livelihood now is ruined because our $600,000 house got smashed by a tree.
Right.
You know, like something like that. That was kind of our mindset with it. Is we're not putting our whole life into this living situation. But the one thing I don't enjoy is, I would say it's a hardship. It's not really that bad, but it's like the composting toilet.
I was curious about that.
What is that?
They're really easy to manage if you are good about emptying it before it's too late.
Oh man.
So in the sense that like there's a pee front that you urinate in, and then you dump that, and then you just put it back in. But if you don't dump it before it gets full, essentially you now have a problem on your hand. Yeah. So, and that happens a lot with us because neither one of us are good at checking it. And same with like the side. It doesn't ever smell. Like I'll say that, like the smell, like people think like, oh, it's like poop sitting in a container in the bottom, like it's going to smell terrible. And they do a really good job. We have a circulating fan that pulls through the toilet, and it honestly never smells. But at some point you do also have to take that out and dump
and then
that.
Where do you dump it?
So it
like
basically,
on my neighbor's.
No, it's a couple acres away.
Down in that river that he was talking about before.
Where we get the water.
Yeah.
Oh my
goodness.
So
it's pretty simple. You start at composting by putting some like dirt in it, essentially like coconut fibers, or you can just get basically like a soil from Home Depot or whatever. Yeah, start exactly, and you just dump that in, and then you just keep mixing it as you are using it. Not while you're using it, but as you over time. And then you're supposed to do about every 2 to 3 weeks, dump it out. And then essentially by that point, it's not like it's poop. It's kind of just like dirt. And if you keep it dry, then it's not like, it doesn't smell. So, and then you can use it if you wanted to. A lot of people do for like gardening and stuff like that. So if you're like actually really off the grid and you want to just be self-sustainable, you can use that for your gardening and stuff like that.
Well,
I don't know why you're looking at me.
We're actually experts in composting now. I'm not sure if you're familiar with our
we have not used it for our gardening.
Oh man. I think the biggest questions we got, and like I don't want to offend you with these questions that seem so, I don't know. We know you're a normal person living a normal life. We're not treating you like some guy out in the woods. But I think people want to know, like, okay, what's your day-to-day? Like, do you go to like a mall? Like, where do you live? Do you go to the grocery store?
Yeah.
Like, what's a normal day? How do you get your mail?
It's a valid question, yeah. So we probably get more mail than the average person does. For my business, I basically have like a box come every day. Mm-hmm. So, we haven't officially got our own address. So right now we just have everything shipped to her mom's house, which I'm sure she loves. But yeah, we get mail. We live in a rural area, but I think people think we really live like off the grid. They're like, oh, they live in the mountains somewhere, and they're like 6 miles out from anybody, and there's no one around. Like we live in a rural area. We're on a 2-acre plot, but everyone around us has about 5 to 8 acres about. So it's just a really spread apart setting. It's still like, I guess, like a country neighborhood. in a sense. So there's still neighbors. We still see people. The people drive by on the roads. We go into the gym about 4 or 5 times a week. So like we have a normal life in a sense.
So your kids see other kids. You guys see other adults.
We hang out with our really good friends. We hang out with them probably twice a week. I go meet up with my buddies at least twice a week and go mountain biking. Like we have a community. We go to a church. We see people there. So it's not like we're like off grid, as you would say, in a sense, like with that kind of stuff. Like we still will go in and eat places on the weekend and have meals at restaurants and stuff. So
right. So your lifestyle is very normal. Your living arrangement may be slightly unconventional in the sense that it's not a suburban house.
Yeah.
Go to the gym, hit the
you have everything
Applebee's.
else. Yeah, exactly. TGI Fridays.
Yep. It's just basically our life. Just gym and then TGI Fridays. Yeah.
What about electricity? Like, what do you guys do for power? Are you on the grid or you have solar?
Yeah, we're not on the grid with that. We looked into getting like a pole put in, and it was going to be like almost $10,000. So we're like, well, we could figure out a lot cheaper
You could add an
option.
addition to the house.
Exactly. Yeah, we could build 2 more houses. So we're like, let's not do that. So basically, at this point, we ran a generator for a long time. Solar, I'd like to get like a really nice solar setup eventually for that, but that just
Again, super expensive.
Yeah, exactly. And it's just, do we need it? And at this point, like, it hasn't been a necessity. And that's this whole living lifestyle is like, what do we really need for life? Are you willing to live without certain things to get what you want? Like, I want to be able to wake up and not leave for work at 9 a.m. And so if living in a tent is me not having to leave my family all day and go to work, like, that works for me and it works for my wife. So we're going to do that. I can wake up whenever I want, essentially, and I go shoot my bow for a little bit, and then I get to hang out with my kids all day, and we get to go to the gym, and I can get my work done whenever I need to get it done, and that's all because of our living style. I mean, we've made certain cuts in certain areas to allow us to do whatever we want, and like right now I'm in California, and we've been here for about 2 weeks, and that's because we live in a tent. If we had a house back over in that area even, we probably wouldn't be here right now because we'd be worried about paying our mortgage and getting all the bills that come with that and stuff. But right now our living cost is just so low that we don't have to really worry about it.
What kind of qualities do you see in your children that you don't think would be there if you lived out here like us savages?
Yeah, total savages. That's actually probably one of the best topics I like to talk about is you see Fox, who was kind of lived here for about 2 years of his life. And he developed much different habits than Grizzly, who's been basically living in that setup for his whole life. He was only, I think, about 7 months old when we moved into the camper. So all he's known is being on this 2-acre property. So from the time he could crawl, he was just crawling through tall grass and just playing in this area. And he's so much more attached to the outside. And I said we're in a rural area, but like, we have tons of deer coming through our property all the time, tons of mule deer. We have geese that are just constantly flying up and down the river. So we just have swarms of geese flying overhead. We have some pheasant that run around our property, tons of squirrels. Turkey will come through spring and fall and just be running around doing their thing.
Are you allowed to hunt any of these?
Yeah, you can. It's all legal game.
And do you?
In the season.
Do you?
Yeah. I do hunt. I don't post much about hunting because I don't think it's an important topic for me personally. I think
I'm a hunter as well. But
okay, yeah. Like I look at hunting as it's the same as like, did you vote? What president did you vote for? Like it shouldn't determine who you are as a human or how you're looked at. So like it's a controversial topic. So I just honestly don't go into it because I don't think it matters. I think what matters is what you do in life, what kind of person you are, how you're treating those around you, how you're raising your kids. Those are topics that really matter. And the rest of it's just, if you want to have an actual conversation about it, I'm open to that. But yeah, for the most part, I don't. But yeah, I do hunt. I got a deer hunt and an elk hunt this year, so I'll be out and doing that.
I've always wanted to do the elk hunt, but I've never done it. I'm a bow hunter as well.
Okay, yeah, there you go. Yeah,
but I'm from super rural area in upstate New York. So
okay,
like this is
whitetail.
Yeah, it's all whitetail. But this is a completely different lifestyle in LA that I live.
Yeah.
Well, not so much anymore because I live in a rural pocket of LA, which is weird to say, but
yeah.
But yeah, it's just a total different lifestyle change. You know,
Yeah,
I can kind of relate to what you're saying about like you just have to shift the mindset to go back towards something like that.
Exactly, yeah. And it's a different, like I said, it's a different mindset. I didn't, my views on life are just so different. Coming from an area like that, there's a different mindset. Like it's almost like a different country, really. Like these people that live here have a different mindset than the people that live in California. And there's all this tension between these states and like, well, this is how you're supposed to live life. But they don't live here. And they don't live in California. So people in New Mexico can't tell people in California how to live. And people in California can't tell people in New Mexico how to live because you don't live there. Like, it's a different world. It's taken me almost 3 years to really wrap my head around the different lifestyles. And like, I was always telling my friends in New Mexico, like, you have no clue what it's like to live in California. And I'm telling people in California, you have no clue what it's like to live in New Mexico. It's two different, like, it literally might as well be a different country. It's extremely different life.
What kind of reaction do you get from, maybe from your friends you grew up here?
Yeah.
When they find out that I moved to New Mexico and I live in a tent. Like, what kind of reaction do you get from people?
Mixed opinions. Some people are like, you're awesome. Like, you're doing life right. Some people are just like, huh? Like, cool.
You're crazy.
Like, yeah, you're crazy. Like, my parents voiced their opinions. They thought we were crazy at first.
Have they been out to visit you?
Oh yeah, they come out. Yeah, family was by far the hardest thing. Like, in the end, and I get a lot of people like that will DM me and be like, I would love to move, but I just can't leave my family. And I always would just tell them like, okay, that's great. Like, your family's family, but they're not your family. Like, once you step into the world of having your own kids, like, now you're taking those kids' life into your hands. And like, as much as fun it is, like, to have your nieces and nephews and grandparents around all the time, like, that's not daily life.
You have to focus on your unit.
Exactly. And like that, our kids' daily life was not cool out here. I hated it for them. And so now they have a great daily life, and they still get to see their cousins and their grandparents. We just not as often, but they still get to do it, and they're still part of their lives.
And it's meaningful.
Exactly. And when we have FaceTime so they can talk every day. And family should not be the reason you stay somewhere, in my opinion, as much as I love my family.
I totally derailed you. You were telling me about your second son and how
that's right.
How different he is. And I totally...
No, you're good.
I was just curious if you guys hunted and actually like were allowed to eat off the land legally.
Yeah. And that's on that topic, that's been a cool part is like, I go out and hunt some ducks in the morning, and I'll bring them back, and I'll teach the boys how to cut them up, and I'll carve out some breast, and then they'll watch the whole process of like, hey, I killed this animal, and then I'm taking it back. We're going to clean it up, and we're going to eat it.
They have an appreciation for how food arrives.
Exactly. I didn't grow up having the opportunity to do that. And now I get an opportunity to teach my boys that and be like, hey, this is where food comes from. And that's one of the greatest things. And I think that just goes back to a whole different topic of society and how removed we are from understanding death in a sense. Yeah, back to what you're saying with Grizzly, he's grown up that stuff now. And Fox still has a tendency to just want to go back and play video games and like want to sit inside and just not go outside as much as Grizzly does. And Grizzly's like, first thing when he does, he wakes up and he's out the door and he's wandering around, like literally chasing the deer around, or just, he's outside. And Fox has a tendency to be a little more inside. And it's because for 2 years of his life, he lived in a California apartment and he was inside a lot. And so I think it's just really put a habit in him that's going to be, I guess, hard to break in a sense. He just has those tendencies to want to live that life versus our kid that's been on this property his whole life. And I wish we could have been earlier to have Fox be in that same situation where all he knew was just being outside. But he still gets to experience it now, which is better than never. So,
how are you a different person now than you were before?
It's definitely been for both of me and Katie, it's been not only like a physical journey, but a spiritual journey. And then I think mental journey has been the biggest thing. Just really getting what you want out of life. I think a lot of times if you live in a certain scenario that you don't want to really think about life because you don't want to come to the realization of maybe that you don't like your life. And like, if you don't want to change or you don't like something, you just will push it away. Whereas like, we've come to a point now where we'll just be like, hey, we don't like this about life. Well, then how do we change it? Because we've accepted that we can change things. We've moved out of state. We've found a different living situation. We do different things out of the norm. So now it's opened our mind to what else can we do? I mean, we're not limited by, hey, we can't do that because it's not cool. No, we just limit ourselves by what are we capable of doing. Like, hey, we want to start another business? Cool, we've already started one, so why not start another one? Like, or we're limited by what we think we can do in a sense.
Not what you think you should do.
Exactly. We've definitely dropped that whole facade of like caring what other people think about what we're doing. We're just going to do what we're going to do and what's best for our family.
You talked previously about saying 10 years down the road, you didn't like where you thought you would be.
Yeah.
Where do you see yourself now in 10 years?
Yeah. That's one of the things that I always think about. I'm like, I'm not really sure now still. Like we've done this whole life change, but I think that's the beauty of it is we don't know where we're going to be in 10 years now still, but it's exciting because I know now that, like I said, the possibilities of where life could take us, we're open. Like we might live in a different state in 10 years and that's fine. Like if I find somewhere else that I like better to live, that I want to live, like we can move there. Like I know it's possible now. Like we've already done it, so why can't we do it again? But ideally, yeah, we'd have a house built on this property, like an actual brick and mortar house. I really don't know. Maybe just be living there and doing the same thing we're doing now. Like I really like my life right now. Like it's great. And so if 10 years from now I'm doing the exact same thing I'm doing now, like I'm perfectly fine with that. Like doesn't scare me at all. So, but if I live in a different state, I'm open to that as well.
What advice or maybe guidance would you give somebody who maybe is kind of at that point in their life where they want to make a big change and are thinking about doing something like this? As somebody who's gone through it, do you have any pointers that you could give to somebody or resources to look at? Or
the biggest thing I could say is, like I said, the mindset. Like you have to accept the mindset that you're just going to do what you're going to do. And because so many people will message, like I said, they'll message me and be like, hey, like I just get so much stuff from my family. Like they're saying this, they're saying that. Like my friends are saying this, saying that. Like, how did you deal with that? And like, it's just accepting the mindset, like I said, that you're going to do what you're going to do. Like you have to explain to them like, hey, thank you for your opinion. I'm going to do this. And then the other one is that people are just scared. It's scary. Like we moved to 800 miles. My wife was pregnant. We literally threw our 3-year-old in a moving van. My pregnant wife drove our other car. And we drove 800 miles to our new house. Like that was freaking scary. And we had no clue if we were gonna have a job when we got there. Like we were just banking on that I could personally train people if I had to there, or get a job at a CrossFit gym, and she could maybe find a salon to cut hair at. Like we didn't have jobs lined up. It was just like, hey, we have this Etsy shop. Let's hope it works out. And we moved and it worked out. Like, so I'm not saying it's gonna always work out for everybody. There's always that chance that it's not gonna work out, but I think taking that chance is worth it. Like if you really don't like your life, try something. If it doesn't work, try something else. Like that's better than just sitting and wallowing in my life sucks. Because if that's the rest of your life, like that's a terrible life. There's so much greater things out there and there's so much opportunity, and you moving could be the greatest opportunity of your life. Like the amount of people you can meet where you move, you don't even know. Like the amount of people I've met since we've moved, it's been insane. Like I have really good friends now that I would not have if I stayed here. And now I still have really good friends that live here. So now I have twice as many good friends. I don't know. It's cool.
Is there like an actual community of people that are kind of living this way that you even online have connected with? There
really is. We drive down to Albuquerque at least twice, maybe 3 times a year. And we've hooked up with some really cool people down in Albuquerque. They have families. 2 of them live in buses. So we go down there and we'll hang out with those families. We just have like a barbecue. And yeah, they're super cool people. I've connected with a lot of people that are really cool that I've never met. It's kind of funny, like the whole summertime's like the meetup because everyone starts traveling again. So wintertime's kind of locked down for a lot of people, or they're like in the warm areas. But yeah, people coming through and just, but that's like the real time to have fun is the summertime and with all the traveling families and stuff. And I don't know, you get to see all the adventures being had, and it's cool though. But there's like definitely a community down there, and there's a lot of really cool people doing cooler stuff than what we're doing, honestly. Like they're really living like what we'd want to do is just traveling nonstop. That'd be fun to do. So,
well, let's talk about your Etsy shop. We've mentioned it a few times. What is it that you do? What types of products do you make? What do you sell?
This is always the funny one. It was easier to explain to people in California, and then when I moved out of state, where it's like a lot more like farm setting, and like your neighbor who's like more of a farmer is like, "Hey, what do you do for work?" And you're like, "Oh, I make custom lights." And they're like, "Okay." Like this isn't like online. I'm like, "Yeah, I just ship lights to people." They're like, "Okay." So basically, yeah, I make custom lighting. It started with us being in an apartment. I just made some lights for our apartment, and people were like, "Hey, those are cool. You should sell them." And I was like, "I should." So then I made 4 lights, and I listed them on Etsy shop that my wife had made. She was originally selling baby clothes that she was making, and that was all because we had a kid. So I started listing lights, and then I sold those lights, and I was like, cool. made some money. I should make more lights. And I made more lights. And then eventually I started selling a bunch of lights and she wasn't selling any baby clothes. So I'm like, let's just make this a lighting shop instead of a baby clothes shop. So I started selling more lights, and then I had some restaurants hit me up and I got to do restaurant lighting. And I was like, well, this is like actually could be a business. So that's what got us in the mindset of, hey, we can maybe make this an actual business. Let's move and take advantage of it. But yeah, basically I'll just do a lot of homes, just real rustic kind of barn house, industrial lighting stuff.
It's like high-end, the words high-end are probably not. It's like really amazing stuff. Where can people check it out? It's Moonstone Fox?
Yeah. My shop's Moonstone Fox. I have an Instagram, Moonstone Fox, and I have links to there.
Beautiful.
I also have a moonstonefox.com. Yeah, it's been fun. And I mean, with that's been just learning how to run a business, which isn't always fun. At the cost of I can do whatever I want.
Where do you build in your home, or where do you build your lights?
Most of the time I end up building in my home, which my wife loves. But yeah, I have a 20 by 8 shipping container that we just set down. I don't need electricity to build them, which is funny. It's like I don't have electricity in a place that I'm building lights. But I can test them out and make sure they work. As long as they work before they go off, obviously, that's fine. But yeah, I build them all in there, and then I ship them out. And as of now, it's pretty crazy. Like I've been in restaurants internationally, lots of homes in the U.S., lots of restaurants in the U.S. I think it was Spain, Mexico, Netherlands, a bunch of just random places that I was like, well, I don't even know where I'm sending this. And they're like, cool, we're going to use this in your restaurant. I'm like, awesome. So yeah, I've got to do lots of opportunity with that and just seeing work like in a building and knowing it's like thousands and thousands of miles away. It's pretty crazy to see that stuff. But probably one of the coolest jobs I got to do was it was the CEO for Virgin Records. He built like a big house down in the
Richard Branson?
Yeah, Richard. Yeah. And like her designer contact. So I got to do a big chandelier for one of his houses that he had all the basically the artists come and stay at. And they built this whole big house, and I got to do a big chandelier over the dining table.
Oh,
so
that's dope.
like,
Did you do it from the shipping container?
Yeah, so it's funny to think like, I'm like building this stuff in like New Mexico, and this shipping container doesn't have electricity, and I'm shipping it out to this mansion, and it's gonna be like this like piece that's featured. I'm like, that doesn't even make sense. It shouldn't be.
That's so cool. But I mean, the piece has like a real story behind it.
Yeah. So that's been fun though.
And we've talked about, because I have an Etsy shop too, just kind of how some months can really like hit. Yeah. And then some months you're like, is this thing working? Like,
yeah. Hitting the refresh button.
Yeah, like I need a blow in it. Like, what's going on? Is it stressful for you when you guys have like a month that's a little slow on Etsy?
I mean, financial stuff's always gonna be stressful. But like I said, we've got our cost of living down to where we don't need a lot. So if we have to, like if the shop does really well, it's like, great, let's pay off some stuff that we might have racked up when we weren't making a lot, or save some money or whatever it is. And then we're not super stressed about it. Like we know we're always gonna have money for food. You can live. So worst case scenario, we'll be eating rice and beans if we have a bad month or a bad few months and we get to the point where we need to, but we'll make it happen still. And I work for marketing with another company, so I have constant pay with that. And then my wife does doTERRA, so she has her oil business that she does as well. So we've kind of learned to not put all our eggs in one basket. So like Etsy is our main source, but we have a lot of other areas that we can make money. If we need to, we can put more resources into those areas and pump out more money. So yeah, it's definitely like if I were to lose one job, I wouldn't be sunk. And that's kind of mentality I said, it's all a mentality thing with us is like, how can we live the life we want? And we've kind of shaped everything around that. If I want to travel more, I could close down the shop and we could still travel. And I don't need to have any income from Etsy if we didn't want to.
Do you take custom orders or do you build the lights and then just put them up there for sale?
I do custom orders, not as much as I used to because custom stuff's stressful. It's just trying to recreate something that somebody had a vision of, and you're just hoping that it matches their vision.
Or as close to or better.
Yeah, and so I personally just stressed. That's probably the most stressful thing in my life, so I stopped doing that because it just stressed me out. I think awake at night, just like, oh gosh, how do I make this?
Oh, for sure.
So I don't do that anymore. I basically just have my designs that I've made, and I'll be like, here's what's available. Let me know if you want it. And that's how I run it now. And I've kind of weeded out all the stressful sides of the business, things that just really stress me out. I'm like, I'm just not going to do that. Like, it's not worth the money. Like, it doesn't matter if you want to pay this amount. Like, I don't want to do it. It's just going to stress me out. And that's, again, one part of our life is like, how do we eliminate stress from our life to the where we're not stressed out every day? Like I said, like a $600,000 looming house payment has over you when you're just like, I got to pay money. And like cutting out all the stressful sides of life. And then so we've taken that into our business as well. Like, how do we make our business not stressful for us and just eliminate things and not let it be about the money? Like, what's going to make us less stressful, not make us more money? Or if there's a side of making both, like, how can we make a lot of money without being stressed? We'll take that route.
I think financial stress is probably like the worst type of stress you can experience.
That'll destroy you, yeah.
It's so hard. What about like privacy?
People, I've had some like people just straight DM me that. I mean, it's just like when you have kids, it's a different life. Like when it's all said and done, our kids are still in our bed. I think we've just kind of at this point just learned to like, okay, they're only gonna be little for so long.
I'm in my daughter's bed, so we're in a nice little cozy little twin together.
Yeah, like you're only gonna be this way for so long, and like
it's a season.
Yeah, like Fox, he like still every night just wants to fall asleep like in this right arm, like every night. That's his spot. He curls up and he just like passes it out on me, and it's like, like I'm only gonna have this for how many more years? Maybe not even years, maybe months, and he's gonna be like, I don't really want to sleep next to you anymore. So I think we've both just like, okay, let's just like enjoy this side of it for as long as we can. And I mean, the reality is we live in a tiny home. It's 300 square feet. Life goal was to be able to walk out on my porch butt naked and just be able to be like, yes. And I can do that right now. I've made it.
I mean, I can do that too.
Yeah, exactly.
A little frowned upon.
End up in jail.
My neighbors might be like, hey, look at that.
They drop by on a horse.
I'm not a huge or really big private person, so like privacy doesn't bother me. My wife's a little more of a private person, so I think it's been harder on her with that stuff. But after 2 years, I think she's just learned like, okay, like I don't really need to be as private as I used to be. Like they're just kids, and like it's my husband.
Yeah, to just try and up and change your entire lifestyle like that is a crazy thing. And that's why I think most people don't do it.
Yeah,
It's that fear that keeps people from doing it. Oh, for
sure. People it's scared. And like, I don't know, if you're not willing to do it for yourself,
right,
do it for your kids. Like if you're fine with just working 80 hours a week for yourself and never having a life, never doing the things you enjoy for yourself, like your kids don't deserve that. Like your kids want to see you, your kids want to hang out with you. Like I was gone all day yesterday because I was out biking with my buddies. We climbed Mount Baldy, but I was gone all day, and like I came home after being gone like 12 hours and they didn't see me all day, and they were like, "Oh, Dad." I was like, dude, I couldn't imagine that being every day though. Like they were so excited to see me. Like they're not used to me being gone. Like I'm with them all day, every day. And they go everywhere I go. And one of them is coming with me. If I go to the post office to drop off packages, like either one or both of them are coming with me. Like they're never not with me. And like them to just not see me, they were like, "Oh, Dad's home." Like I couldn't imagine doing that for like 5 to 6 days a week and just them never seeing me. Like I couldn't do it. I don't know if they'd cope because they're kids, but it's just not a life I want.
It's not what they know. It's
yeah. And if I had to, like, I'd do what it takes to get by in life. Like if I had to go get a job at Burger King, like not my ideal life, but like I'll go do it. And if it comes to that, like it may, who knows? Like my businesses may all fall through and then I'm working at Starbucks. Like that's just a season of life and I'll figure something else out.
And that teaches them a valuable lesson too, just as much as being home. Is like,
exactly.
So where do people go that, they want to see your house or they want to see more about your lifestyle and stuff like that? Where can people find your stuff?
Instagram is the spot, at Den for Our Cubs. That's our...
All spelled out, right?
All spelled out, Den for Our Cubs, one word. That's our main place. I try to just post about the kids, about life, about raising boys, put a different view on it, give a dad's point of view on living and just what it's like to be a dad and raise boys, and how do I portray what it's like to be a man to these kids that are just so absorbent and just soaking up everything that I do. And that's stressful, like everyone knows. Like, how do you raise a kid? It's terrifying. Yeah. So I don't know, I try to portray that and just the joys of life.
Well, it's just kind of cutting out a little bit of the clutter, stuff you don't need, and just more focus on the essentials.
Yeah, and once you do that, you realize how much you don't need. Like, we went from, okay, we just won't use this, to, okay, well, we didn't really need that. Do we need this? Well, we didn't need that. We probably don't need these. And eventually you get to a point where you're like, I didn't need any of that. Why do we ever have it? I don't know. It's funny. Like, even we get caught up in it too. It's like we only had one car for a long time. It's like, we only needed one car. Like, what are the chances your car is going to really break down? Like, it's a pretty small chance. And like, you have 2 cars under the assumption like, I need another car because this car breaks down.
Backup car.
It's like, but it's just a backup car. So it's just thousands of dollars just sitting there. It's like, do you really need 2 cars? No, you could probably be fine with 1 car and get through life, the rest of your life with 1 car. And you'd be fine. And it's like that kind of mentality of like, how much do you actually need? At least obviously there's indulgences. Like, I have like 5 bikes. So like I have my areas that I have way too many things. So everyone has their downfall, but it's just taking life and looking at it in a different view and changing your perspective and really, really, like I said, having the mindset of what do I need to get by in life and what's going to make me happy. And that goes into a much deeper conversation of, obviously, some people are called to certain places in life and it might not be a great time of your life. Like, I think my time in California wasn't the greatest time of my life in a sense, but I went through so much while I was there. And I think that God shaped me to become who I am now because of that time. So to say, like, if I would have moved out of California right when we got married, I wouldn't be the same person because I would have never gone through those struggles and been through those things that I went through that made me now 31 who I am. So I think you're called to certain times, and it might not always be the best times, but you're going to have a lot of times that are just you have to go through.
So these are some social media questions we got. First of all, your wife wants to know, are you single?
Is she telling you something?
I was just saying, I don't know if it's a good thing.
Wait, am I, honey?
Am I better get on the phone right now.
This is actually a really good one. Did you ever have a moment where it was so overwhelming and you felt like you made the wrong choice? Were there any like major setbacks that freaked you out?
There's always the doubts in your head of, is this going to work? Is that going to work? I don't know. Is somebody going to show up on my doorstep one day and, take my kids away? As a parent, you have a lot of those things. And then like just as an adult, you have a lot of those things and just worrying about life. But no, honestly, I think for us, I was so tired of being in California, just like so sick of it and so over the life I had here that like just being anywhere else was like so refreshing. Like even when we moved into that house, like we weren't in a country neighborhood setting. Like we had neighbors across the street and like neighbors close. Like we were on about 4 acres there. So we could still see our neighbors, but like just to walk outside and like not be in a concrete area. Like I walk out and I could see like fields of alfalfa growing and stuff. It's just different. It's just nice. Right. So like all the stresses that I had, any of those were just greatly outweighed by, dude, we're not in like a normal setting anymore. And this is so nice.
That's great.
Like there's not hundreds of cars driving by. We don't got to worry about freeways. Like just all the things that just stress you out as living in California. Like we didn't have that anymore. It was just like a weight off our chest. So, I mean, life always has the stresses, but I think it just outweighs it so much. You're doing so much in one area of life, but the other life, you're just like, oh, this is just how life is. And I'm just going to accept it. Like, whereas like, I'm in a gym all day preaching, like, if you don't like something about you, like change your body, like change yourself, like work out, like eat better, do these things. And then on the side, I'm living this life that I don't enjoy. So it's like, they both go hand in hand. Like you should have a physical good health. And then on that, you should have like a mentally good health and a good life.
One is no good without the
Exactly.
other.
So you can be as fit as you want and do whatever you want and be as healthy as you want, eat as good as you want. Your life sucks. It's not gonna outweigh the other one. So you have to have a good balance. And I think that's where tiny living and this whole just like our journey of eating good and just being healthy in general, they fit together so well. Like just a mentally good life and just a healthy life in general.
Do you plan on homeschooling the kids? If that's personal, that's totally...
No. Yeah, we do. I was homeschooled my whole life. Me and my 3 siblings, all the way up into, I took some satellite campus classes through high school. But other than that, my mom taught me, and people always, my like go-to for is like people that think they can't homeschool their kids. Like I could never do that. Is my mom was a 16-year-old high school dropout who became an international model, and literally didn't know whether or not the sun revolved around the earth or the earth revolved around the sun. No joke. And she raised all 4 of us, and we all are alive.
And you seem pretty tenacious and pretty smart.
So some parts of the internet still aren't sure about that.
Yeah.
Right?
So she could do it. Like
how can it move
anybody
if it's
can
flat?
do it. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, the earth is flat. What are you talking about? Yeah. So yeah, it's definitely something we're gonna do. My wife was not into the idea in the beginning, and then as she's had kids, and like I said, mindset changes when you have kids, and you go, do I really want to send my kid somewhere else for hours a day and be taught by somebody I don't know? It's like, maybe not. Maybe I just want to teach them on my own and give them the values that we like. I mean, other people's values are important too, but they're our kids. So we want to raise them. Yeah, we want to raise them how we want to raise them. So
Bugs. Are bugs a problem?
That's shocking. So people are always like, how do you keep small animals out and stuff? Aren't the ticks terrible? I've never had a tick. I run around the property like all day in tall grass. I think we're just lucky we don't have a lot of ticks in our area. Like I know New York is just tick ridden.
Right.
But yeah, our area doesn't have ticks. Bugs, we have 2 boys, so the more bugs, the better, I guess.
Oh yeah, heaven, man.
Yeah, like it's like, oh, there's a spider that needs to be smashed in the house. Get it. It's like free for all. So yeah, there's not that many bugs, to be honest. Mosquitoes, we have mosquitoes, obviously, but nothing.
There's an oil for that.
There's an oil, exactly. There's an oil for that. And then as far as like, I don't know, other snakes and stuff like that, like I've seen a couple snakes around, but
you're on a raised, I mean, your
we're on a
tent
platform,
has a raised foundation.
Yeah,
so
we're about
it's
a
not
foot
like
off the
you're
ground.
not in, on
Yeah,
the
yeah. We're not on the dirt ground, so it's definitely, I mean, we have
And
a
you're
door.
in a dry environment too, right?
Yeah, it's
like
very dry.
very
It stays around like 15 to 20% humidity, so it's
Right,
very,
that
very
helps.
dry.
Do you grow any of your own food?
I do. We're torn between like wanting to live this farm lifestyle. Like when we first moved out there, we're like, we're getting chickens and a goat and all this stuff. And then I kind of realized like, wait, you have to be home all the time to have all these things. Like you have to take care of them and to have like a garden. You have to be there. Like we planted a garden before we left and basically set up a timer off of the hose from the pump house. And I ran a lot of hose over and I have it sitting there. And I'm just like, well, whatever's there when we get back is what it is. Because I'm not going to not go to California because I want to grow my own food. Like I would love to grow my own food and just be fully self-sustained, but that requires being home.
Right.
And for us right now in this season of life, we want to travel. We want to do things. And so that's not ideal. Like I would love to wake up and go get fresh eggs every morning and cook them. But like reality is it's just not going to allow us the lifestyle we want to do right now. Eventually we will do that and probably maybe get a cow and stuff like that. But right now it just doesn't fit our lifestyle. And we have like farmers markets. They have real fresh eggs and chickens and you can get some raw milk from a lot of local farms and stuff like that. So there's a lot of it available because we're in the country. So even if we don't grow it, we can get really good quality, fresh stuff from local people.
Just as good.
Well, thank you so much for being here.
Yeah, thank you
I
guys
think
for
it's
having
been
me.
Really insightful, really inspiring for sure. I don't know. I feel like
Aaron's about to go home and
I'm like,
smash his computer.
I'm about to just throw everything out the window and throw a tent up in my backyard.
Oh, that's funny. That's what my buddy always says. He's like, dang it, now I got to sell all my bikes.
Dang.
I'm like, no, you don't have to sell your bikes,
keep
man.
the bikes.
Keep the bikes. Just have a better mindset. That's all I'm saying.
It really does make you think, though, man. Like even with
I just want to keep my workshop and then I'll build a tent.
That's all. Yeah, there you go, man.
We also want to thank our founding partner of the show, Filter By, for making the series and this episode possible. And again, follow us on Instagram at howtohome_guide. Make sure you follow Zac on Instagram at Den for Our Cubs and on Etsy, Moonstone Fox.
Moonstone
was the
Fox,
name of
yeah.
the shop?
we'll put everything in the show notes so you can find them
it'll
in
all
one
be
spot.
there. And make sure you guys rate us on your podcast listening app of choice. Give us that 5-star rating. And we appreciate you guys interacting with us and following along with the show. So stick around. We've got more episodes coming up soon. The How To Home podcast is brought to you by FilterBuy.com, your one-stop direct-to-consumer replacement air filter brand, and is produced in collaboration by Amassed Media Group, LLC, and Intelligent Arts and Artists. The show is executive produced by George Ruiz and Aaron Massey.